Hey everybody, welcome to Harmon Garage. I'm Aaron, and today we're going to get back on Project Evergreen. And I know I've said in the last couple videos that everything I got to do right now on Evergreen's welding, but I put some thought into it and we're going to do something that's not welding. I know I still have to finish that inner fender. I know I still got to make shock mounts. I know I got to finish fastening both dually fenders. I still got to finish patching where the marker lights used to be. I've got the parts came in for cab corners and rockers to do those. I got to patch the floors up a little bit and so on and so forth. But I got to thinking about it, and what good's it gonna do for me to do all that metal work and all that faux patina and everything else if this engine's no good? Now, I know the head is essentially brand new. It's been completely gone through, completely redone. It's got all the everything's, it's new. So the bottom end of the motor seemed really good. I had it apart. Could still see cross hatching in the cylinders. Didn't have any ridges. Wasn't all mucked up and gunked up, and everything was clean and good. And so that part doesn't make me nervous. That should be okay also. And then we come down to the cam. Well, I may or may not have in an earlier video taken a grinder, carbide bit, sanding wheel, amongst other things, to the lobe on the cam for the fuel pump, because it wasn't the right cam for this motor. It worked in this motor, just not with a mechanical fuel pump. So kind of worried about the cam, and you know, so you get what I'm saying. So it's not going to do me any good to do all the other work to the truck if this motor doesn't fire up and purr like a kitten with great oil pressure. So in this video, we're going to do a first start, and we're going to get this thing fired up and make sure it doesn't make any funny noises, make sure we've got good oil pressure, make sure it doesn't overheat, make sure it's all good. So that's what we're going to do. Let's get started. All right, well, I spent a whole day getting stuff prepped to start doing this. Hang on. Getting stuff prepped to do the first start on this. And one thing that I found out is that water pump is off of the 250 that was in the burnout truck. And I do not have any pulleys that I can put on that water pump that'll line up with that bottom pulley down there. So that's not gonna do it. And so I have to switch back to the water pump that was on the 292. And when I do that, it has a bypass hose that runs up to here. So I have to change this out also. So in other words, we're already redoing stuff that we already did, and we haven't even got started yet. So anyways, I got the water pump checked out, cleaned up, painted, water neck, the other piece, all that junk there. We got our alternator cleaned up and painted. We got our radiator mounts cleaned up and painted. We got our alternator fan and pulley and our mounting brackets. And yeah, so all that stuff's painted up so we can put it on. And our radiator has been cleaned up and painted for a while, so we can go ahead and put it in. And now we have our exhaust manifold and our intake, which is what I'm working on cleaning up now so we can paint. All that stuff goes lower on the motor, underneath or below this. So I wanted to get that done first, and there's some modifications that I want to make to this. So I figured I'd show you guys, but once we make the modifications on this, it's going to have to sit and the paint's gonna have to dry, and the other stuff that we're gonna do to it's gonna have to cure. So we're kind of just letting it, we'll be able to work on that stuff and some other stuff while we wait on this to be ready. So, all right, modification time. So down in here, if you guys don't know, this intake manifold sits on here like so. Slides over these studs, get nuts. There's a bolt that comes through here. It's bolted on there, solid. So basically, the exhaust is coming out of the motor and heating up the bottom of the intake manifold, which would be preheating your air fuel mixture, which apparently when they made this and in really cold climates, that can be a good idea. Well, they had this flapper thingy in here, kind of like so, and it was on this pivot rod that went through here like so. On the other side of the pivot rod, there was a like a heat thing, thermostatic thing that would open and close this so that it would allow the heat to come through or block it off. And what I'm getting at is we just want to block it off. We don't want the heat coming up, because if you know anything about it, you know that you want your intake temps to be cool as possible. So when the intake is bolted to the exhaust manifold, it's really hard to get your air intake temps down. But having the exhaust manifold intentionally pump heat onto the intake manifold doesn't help the cause. So I'm gonna take this here and I'm gonna cut it off so that it's the same width as this. I'm still thinking about using this, but it doesn't really block it off all that great. So I want to make a new plate that actually blocks it off good, and we'll put that plate in there, maybe. And if I can weld it to this rod, then that'll be good. If I can't, then we'll secure it another way. We can weld to the cast, but yeah. So first thing we're gonna do is make a plate that fits down in there, and then we'll find out what we're gonna be able to do as far as fastening it in there. And we'll keep going from there. Okay, we got it in there. I got it welded. We've got our rod in both ends there. And as you can see, there's a gap up there and there, but it's tight the rest of the way around. And like I told you, I have some high temp JB weld, and that's what we're going to be using to extreme temperature, good up to 1,000 degrees. Exhaust manifolds, tailpipes, mufflers, engine blocks, ductwork, blah, 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 blah. Set time 1 hour, functional cure 24 hours. So I went ahead and cleaned in there and ground up, roughed up everywhere that I want to put this. We're gonna put it, like I said, on the ends of the rod so that It keeps it from twisting. Still debating whether or not I want to just weld that. You can weld cast. It's not always great, and it doesn't always hold. But if you preheat it and yada, yada, yada. I'm gonna try this JB Weld. If it fails, hopefully it'll get us to the truck gathering. I mean, I know it'll get us to the truck gathering and back, because worst case, that starts to move around in there. There's not far it can go, and it's just gonna preheat the intake. So I'm gonna let that weld cool off for a little bit so I don't burn the heck out of myself. And then we're gonna put some of this in and see how it goes. Okay, I very thoroughly read the instructions on the high heat JB Weld. It says to mix it up thoroughly, even color, blah, blah, blah. Spread it out into desired areas, clean areas thoroughly, grind them, you know, scuff them up so it's got something to bond to, yada, yada, yada. Apply, it said 1 to 3 hours for setup time and 24 hours to cure, which is fine. I just wanted to get it done. That's my main thing. So there's that. So we got it all mixed up. We got it put on. And it also said if you need it cured faster, to use a non-flame heat source such as a heat gun, hair dryer, yada, yada, yada. It was trying to flow through the holes and stuff where I didn't need it to. Got it here too, over here too. It was trying to flow through the holes and stuff where I didn't want it or didn't need it to, and it wasn't staying where I needed it to. So I took a heat gun and heated it up just to the point, or dried it just to the point where it was more solid. I didn't want to force it cured, because anytime you force something cured, it usually isn't good, and it usually makes it brittle, or usually makes it not work like it's supposed to. Even though they said you could, I still didn't want to. So jibber jabber, blah, blah, blah. It's on there. I'm gonna let it sit. My goal for today was to get the intake and exhaust manifold. The exhaust manifold modified, cleaned up and painted. Intake manifold cleaned up and painted. The mosquitoes are bugging the crap out of me. And then I kind of wanted to get like the distributor put in, maybe the spark plug wires made, and that's about it. It's Sunday and I'm trying to just get myself far enough ahead of the game that I'll be able to finish everything that I wanted to do for this video tomorrow, so I can edit it tomorrow night, have it up Tuesday. So I'm gonna clean up the intake manifold first, and then we'll think about getting some paint on it, and then we'll see how that stuff feels. It's all mostly on the inside, so it shouldn't really matter, but I also don't want to encapsulate it in paint and have it not be able to breathe to cure. So I don't know, we'll see. I'm gonna get some stuff cleaned up. I'm gonna get some stuff painted. I'll update you guys when we get it done. Okay, so I mentioned before, I had to take my thermostat housing off because this water pump isn't going to work because of spacing, because of pulleys, and so on and so forth. Well, the original thermostat housing that I had had a different thermostat, a lot bigger thermostat. And so my son went to go get a thermostat for me, and I've got the brackets and stuff to mount the alternator. I want to go ahead and do that because I'm going to switch the water pumps out right now, and the upper bracket for the alternator goes on the water pump. So I'm going to tighten that bracket that I just put on down. We're going to pull the bolts for the water pump, take it off, grab the new water pump, put it on, and then we can put the bracket on, then we can put the alternator on, and we can actually say that we've made some sort of progress. I can put the bottom piece of the thermostat housing on while we wait for the thermostat, and then do the other half when it comes. So anyways, we're going to grab something to tighten those bolts down. We're also going to get what we need to take the water pump off, and we'll just keep on going. I can actually talk to you guys while I'm walking away to get tools and stuff now, because I finally got rid of the camera that was starting to have bad audio and upgraded to another one that has a microphone that I can put on me. So something that's all new to me. I don't know how it's going to work, so we're trying it out. Hopefully, this won't look too terrible since I painted it with it all together. And since I never started this, never put water in it, and the gasket all stayed on the block, I should be good without having to change gaskets. So that's good. We'll see. If it leaks, then we'll know we got to do a different one. If it doesn't, then we'll know we're good. All right, I'm gonna get this stuff bolted back down, and we'll move on to the next thing. All right, I got the water pump bolted on. You may notice that there's a bolt missing right there. The reason that's missing is because that is where our top bracket for our alternator goes. So with that being said, next order of business is to install our alternator. And then not sure that's necessary for that bolt to be that long, but that's how long it is, so I'm gonna go with it. that's gonna go. Not quite sure how that works. Looks like it needs to go that way, which would mean, yeah, maybe that's right. Let's see if I can find that voltage. Okay. All right, that looks about right. We'll leave the rest of that loose for the moment because we're gonna have to put a belt on and adjust our belt. And I'm looking at this, and I don't know that I put it on right. There's not really any other way that it could go on, but it doesn't appear that the pulleys are lining up. So probably gonna have to look into that too. So just keep going. All right, well, I'm making really slow progress on this thing, and I have my reasons, but it is what it is. So I'm working on it. We got the alternator on, we got our pulley on, we got our belt on. I ordered a new bypass hose, we got it on. We got our heater core hooked up. All of this all of that thermostat housing, thermostat, everything for the cooling system except for putting the radiator in and putting the upper and lower radiator hoses on, which I thought I already had. I thought I had already bought, but apparently I didn't, so I had to order them this morning. They will be here tomorrow. We're gonna start it today at some point. Having those radiator hoses aren't gonna stop us from firing it up for a minute or two. So we'll still get it running in this video. I'll still finish filming this video today. We're just not gonna be able to tune it, let it sit there and run whatever else, but we'll be able to find out if it has oil pressure and it's gonna do what we need it to do. And that's the whole kind of process we got here. So I got the camera set up. I already have the intake and exhaust manifold bolted back together. There's like a block off gasket that came in the gasket kit that I have. So I put that on top of the modifications that I made to the exhaust manifold. So yeah, it's ready to go back on. I have studs that are gonna go in the very front hole and the very back hole, and our gasket will slide over those studs to hold it on. And then our very most outside bolts on the intake slash exhaust manifold will slide over those, and I can put nuts and washers on those to hold it on while we do the rest of the stuff. So I still got to get the bolts, and all these bolts and clamps right here are what hold the intake and exhaust manifold on. I still have to get those cleaned up, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Next time you see me, we'll be putting the intake and exhaust manifold on. I've got a brand new carburetor to pull out, and intake and exhaust manifold, carburetor, ignition system, and battery, starter, some wiring. We might be ready to try to start this thing, so let's get to it. Okay, finally got all the parts cleaned up. I've got some studs here, And I'm going to screw the studs in the very front hole and the very rear hole of the head here. And then the studs will hold the gasket, and they'll give us something to set the intake and exhaust manifold up on, and we can just start a nut real quick to hold it in place. Why? Because I'll show you in a minute, but the other bolts have, it's like a bracket and a bolt goes through it and it just pushes down on the intake and exhaust manifold. It doesn't actually like have a hole in it where it goes through it and goes on. So this will hold it in place while we do all that. So I'm just going to go ahead and screw these in, and then we'll get our gasket and whatnot and get going. I think the other head probably already had these studs in it, but I don't have that head anymore. And I know I didn't pull them out, and I don't remember, but I went and picked these up this morning, and I think this is the best way to go. So we got our gasket here, if I can fit it all in the camera somewhere. It's all one piece, metal on one side, whatever that is on the other side. It doesn't say, you know, put this side against the block or whatever, and I'm thinking that this metal side would be better against. Honestly, it can only go one way, so like I thought, the metal side would be better against the exhaust manifold. So that's what we're going to do. We got that on there. Then we've got our intake and exhaust manifold that I've already shown you is freshly painted. It looked like the holes in the manifold were big enough that I was going to need a flat washer on there, but they're not, and a flat washer, I'm dropping everything today. Struggle bus time, all aboard. Oh man. Alright, now, anybody see where that lock washer went? Nope, me neither. Alright, found one. And once we get these, I'm not going to tighten these down tight, I'm just going to get them as tight as I can get them by hand. And then we'll go ahead and start putting the other stuff on. And then we'll go ahead and kind of tighten it all down together. Now, there's two longer tabs with longer bolts, and they go in the, I guess you'd call it the second hole back, and the last hole, or the second hole from the front, and the last hole from the back, because the manifold really sticks out here. So you gotta use these bigger ones for this. And then, can you guys tell I made this? Yeah, you probably can. I didn't actually make it. This part of the bracket was already here. I just put the right piece on the end to clip the cable into. So this is going to go on the bolt, and then this is going to go, and that's what holds our cable. And that's why it's got this flat spot right here, because when the cable pulls, it pushes it against the exhaust manifold, and it can't really move. So and looking at that, I'm not really sure how it's going to work, but we'll figure it out when the time comes. Now I got all the easy one done. Now we get to go to what I like to call the PETA ones. Pretty sure if you sit there and spend a little time thinking about it, you'll be able to figure out what PETA stands for. So, all right. You guys get the gist of it. I just got 2 more that I got to put in, and then I'm going to come back with a wrench and start tightening all these down. And I'm not really going to like torque them to a torque spec. We're just going to kind of torque them by ear, or whatever you want to say, by feel, I guess it would be, not by ear. But anyways, I'll speed it up so you don't got to sit here and watch me put all these bolts in. Okay, I got a carburetor that is brand new but used, if that makes any sense. And I can't use that gasket because I don't even have enough room to put the nuts on. So apparently I need just a regular flat gasket. And luckily I have one. I might be taking them studs out and putting longer studs in. I do not like how short they are. But we'll see. Okay, so there's another bracket that I got to put on to make the whole throttle pedal work, and I haven't cleaned it all up yet, so I need to do that. And then I'm waiting on upper and lower radiator hoses, like I think I mentioned earlier, they'll be here first thing in the morning. So I have to put the radiator in, upper and lower hoses, and then we still have the distributor wires, starter, and then we're gonna have to mess with the wiring and a fuel system and all that, and I've had about all I can take for today, pain-wise, so I'm gonna call it quits, rest up a little bit, we'll come back in the morning, and keep going on it, and tomorrow it's gonna run. I'm not gonna give it any other options. Tomorrow it's gonna run. All right, here we go. Been making slow and steady progress. I haven't really been filming much. I've had a lot of stuff going on, but we got upper radiator hose. I had to use 2 different hoses with a split because I couldn't find a hose that fit this configuration. This motor's out of like a C50 or a C60 truck, so this straight up thermostat housing would have came up higher to a blah blah blah. Had to use that, got it to work. We got our cap and rotor switched over, got our distributor cleaned up, got it stabbed. This should be number 1. I got to make wires for it. Lower hoses on and tight. Pretty much our whole cooling system is radiators in. Don't know if I showed you guys that yet or not. I don't remember. And pretty much the whole cooling system's wrapped up, except right here I just put this bushing in there. We have to run the mechanical temperature gauge out and hook it into there, and then the whole cooling system will be sealed up and we'll be able to put coolant in it. But since I have to hook that gauge up and we have a deadline, we're on a time crunch, rather than just taking gauges and slapping them on the fender up there so we can watch the vitals when we try to start this thing, I'm gonna go ahead and mount the gauges where they're gonna stay. So this truck doesn't have a radio. I'm not gonna put a radio in it, and I don't want to cut anything up or drill any holes in anything. So this opening right here where the radio is supposed to be is big enough for 2 gauges to sit in. So I'm just going to have oil pressure and temperature. That's all I'm really worried about. And I'm just going to make a plate that covers this area here. We'll put the 2 holes in it and we'll have our gauges there. So that way, if I need to add any toggle switches for anything, I can put them here where we have holes. And at the end of the day, I'm going to put 2 little holes in for some screws to hold that in place. I was thinking about double-sided tape, but 2 little holes are really easy to fix. So if we ever need to take that plate back off and put a radio in it or whatever, it'll be easy, or the radio will cover it or whatever. So that's an update. I'm going to get my stuff together, start making a template for my piece to put the gauges in there, and we're gonna go do that. We'll get the oil and temperature gauges put in, and then we'll keep going. We're getting closer. I got spark plug wires, starter, finish hooking up the carburetor, add fluids, pops is back, and then I gotta put some kind of temporary fuel system on it for right now so we can see if it'll run, and hook up some wires, but that's quick and easy stuff. So let's keep going. Okay, I got my template all made out. Everything measures out perfect. It's square, you know, overly done for a template to go put some gauges in. But I got a piece of brand new clean metal here that's never been used before. I'm going to put this on here, trace this out, and then we'll go and cut it out on the, I'll probably have to cut a chunk out of this, and then I'll fine tune it on the bandsaw over there and clean it up. And then these lines that I have on my template are the opening for the holes in the dash, so I know that my gauges have to go inside these two lines. So that's what we're working on. I'm gonna get this traced out. We'll get it cut out and then put some holes in it, and we'll bring you guys back and show you what we're doing when we go to mount the gauges. All right, well, I had every intention of filming more of this process and showing you guys putting this together, but I cut my piece out, rounded the corners on the sander, took a jigsaw and cut the holes. I've used a hole saw before, but the hole saws have a tendency to kind of walk. Anyways, used the hole saw, got the gauges to fit nice and tight, and I went to set this in here just to test fit it and make sure it was going to fit. And it kind of was hard going in, and I pushed a little bit and it went snap and like sucked itself in there, and it's in there now. And I could most likely get it back out if I wanted to, but the fact that it's in there and it's really tight and holding itself like that means I don't have to drill any holes in the dash. So we're just gonna leave it. So yeah, so that's in there. Now I gotta go, I just gotta give her a little reach around from the bottom to get some stuff hooked up. And then there's a hole out here in the firewall right there that has a plug in it. So I can pry that plug out, put a grommet in it. I can run my copper oil pressure line and my line for my temperature gauge out to put in here. Then we can hook those up and keep doing what we're doing. Okay, you guys may be looking going, what the heck? I thought this had a radiator in it. And you would be right, it did. But when I first got the truck, when I took the motor and everything out of it, it still had coolant in it. It was full. So I said, all right, the radiator's fine. So we cleaned it up and painted it so we can reuse it. Well, I filled the motor with oil, started pouring coolant in the radiator, stopped to check it, and it was running all over the floor. Needless to say, sometime between sitting there doing nothing and getting put back in, started leaking. I got this 4-core aluminum radiator laying around here that was from another project, and we're going to make it work. I just have to make a few little modifications in here, and we'll get it in. So it's hard to get you guys down in here where you can see, so I'm going to clean this up, what we need to do, and then I'll bring you guys back when we put the radiator in. Alright, well, as you can probably see, the radiator has been installed, and as much as I hate to, I had to butcher up my mounting brackets to make it fit, but we did. It's nice and sturdy. You can tow the truck with it now, so we're in pretty good shape. I had to switch over the lower hose because the outlets on the radiator aren't as big as the ones on the factory radiator were. I happen to have another flex hose for the bottom that fit the radiator, or fit the motor and fit this radiator. So we're in good shape there. And actually, using this radiator with the taller fill cap, that we might have to, you know, slight possibility that we're going to have to clearance the hood for the radiator, but you know, stuff happens. Anyways, that brings our cap up higher, our fill point higher, which still doesn't put it above this hose, but it makes it a lot closer to being the highest point in the system. So yeah, and seems like that shrunk down on there okay. So now we're right back to where we were, what, Pops, about an hour and a half ago?
Yeah, 45 minutes.
Yeah, hour ago. We're right back where we were an hour ago. And, yeah, so, motor's full of oil. I'm gonna fill it with coolant right after I hook that other heater hose back up. And see if it can not leak all over the floor this time, because that'd be very beneficial to the cause that we're going for here. So let's see what happens. All right, well, I'm about ready to change the name of this truck from Evergreen to Can't Get Right. Because no matter what I try to do to this truck, it's fighting me. But I'm not a quitter, you guys know that. I don't give up. We're gonna get it done. I got it all filled with oil. We got the radiator put in, got it all modified, everything fits. It's solid, it ain't going nowhere. Hoses are hooked up, filled it up with water. Everything looked great. I went to go take a look at what it was going to take to do the exhaust, and I don't know if y'all can see up there or not, but that freeze plug right there is leaking. Water bucket. So yeah, what's that mean? Well, we got to put a freeze plug in it, and we gotta let the coolant drain down. I can drain it out of the radiator, which I will do, but regardless, it's still gonna have to drain down lower than that freeze plug on its own before I can pop that freeze plug out. So I'm gonna try to get as far as I can with it right now. I went ahead and put the starter in. So that's done. I got my throttle hooked up. Return spring is kind of hokey for right now, but that's just for right now. Adjust that more later. And got my vacuum port put back in the intake. Got my brake booster hooked up. I got to hook a couple of those up and plug a couple. So as far as I can think right now, all I have left to do is make spark plug wires, run the wires to the distributor, alternator, and starter, some sort of exhaust, fix the freeze plug, and run a fuel system to the carburetor, which the fuel system to the carburetor is just going to be temporary, because I need to finish some stuff in the back so I can put the bed floor in, so I can put the fuel tank in the bed. You'll learn more about that later. I got my oil pressure gauge from inside permanently hooked up. I got my temperature gauge from inside permanently hooked up. So I've got a conglomerated mess of wires right here that, yeah. Here's our exciter wire for our starter. That should be okay, right? We'll just throw that right back on there. No, I don't think so. We'll fix it. Not sure what that is, but we don't need it anymore. This is our hot for our coil. I don't like the way that looks either. This wire is just literally making a loop and not doing anything. The thing that's making me slightly nervous is there should be more wires going down to our starter, which I don't know. And I still got to find the wires to the alternator, which I don't know. I'm gonna figure out some wiring, straighten up some wiring, get some of that done. I want to try to get the wiring and the spark plug wires done today. And then tomorrow morning I can just do the exhaust and the freeze plug, which shouldn't be terribly bad. Here we go. All right, well, pretty sure I showed you guys last night that we had a freeze plug that was leaking, and it slowed down process. But anyways, we kept going. I got over here this morning. I got the freeze plug popped out. Let's get out here where we got some natural light and see if you can see this, but see that light shining through down there? That's our hole in it. So I didn't have a freeze plug here that fit it. Had to run to town to get one. And we're gonna take it and put it in our hole back down there. So I just gotta get in there with some emery cloth, clean that hole up just a little bit to make sure it's not rusty and whatnot. I'll put a little bit of silicone on the freeze plugs like I always do, and we'll get it tapped in there. I can't film it because I can't even see it, so I can't get a camera in there. Anyways, we're doing better. We're getting closer. I tore a bunch of wiring up last night. This was all stuff that was in there that's not needed. Some of this stuff is not needed. Some of it's needed. Some of it's a mess. The wiring in this thing was in absolute terrible shape, but I pretty well got it sorted out. So freeze plug, we got a wire in the starter and wire in the alternator. That's all I'm really worried about for right now. We have mechanical gauges, and then we got to do some exhaust so that I feel safer starting it without just having an open header. So I'm gonna get the freeze plug in. I'll get some wiring done. I'll update you guys at what I did with the wiring and how it looks, and then we'll get to the exhaust. All right, well, it's been a little bit. By a little bit, I mean way longer than it should have been. And yeah, got the freeze plug put in. Maybe you guys can see it back there, maybe you can't. I got an exhaust, a short exhaust, kind of sort of put on, and I got my wiring run. Got one wire alternator set up, hooked up, wire coming over here. Got my wire here going to my distributor. Got my power wires and my excite wires going down to my starter. And I got some temporary battery cables and a battery that's not all that great in there. So some progress was made, and I'm telling you what, this truck is fighting me with every ounce of energy it has to fight. This sucker does not want an inline 6 in it. It ain't fought me with anything else, but it does not want this motor in it. I can tell you that right now, because it is fighting me tooth and nail. So we don't really have nothing left to do but put some fuel in it and block a couple of vacuum ports. And I wanted to show you guys something here. We had to make our special little tool to get our freeze plug in there, because of back in there, kind of how it was, where it wasn't that easy to get to. So for $29.95, 5 easy payments, $29.95, you can have yourself a custom Harman Garage freeze plug installer. So that's 5 easy payments, $29.95. Let me know if you're interested. All right, so I guess I don't want to hook the fuel system up to it and fire it up right away. I want to kind of pour a little bit of fuel down the carburetor and see if it'll kick at all. I'll show you guys, but I have turned the key just to make sure it was going to crank, and it did. So we'll do it again real quick. It's powered up, it cranks. I have not checked to make sure that I have power to my distributor, which probably be a good thing to do before we go crazy with this, but whatever. So will it start? That is the question. Let's find out right now. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and unplug my coil wire here, and Pops is gonna go in there. Don't have power right now. Dad, turn the key on. Now I have power. So we got power to our coil. We know that's good. So let me grab a screwdriver real quick. We know our coil has power, so I'm just gonna pull the spark plug wire real quick. And okay, go ahead, crank it. Okay. I don't know if you guys saw that or not, but I did. We got spark jumping all over the place, so that's good. Okay, so we know we got spark, and it hasn't really cranked enough yet to show oil pressure, and I just ran all those new lines and everything, so it's going to take a minute before it gets up there. So I'm going to get a little bit of gas. We're going to pour it down in the carburetor. We're just going to see if she tries. All right, well, should have everything. Going. Put a little bit of gas in there and see what she wants to do. All right, Dad, see what happens. Okay, we got popping and banging going both ways, so I'm gonna.
Did you put your
Just the time. What?
Put your plugs on your vents?
Yes. if they didn't just get blown off, which they did because one's right here on the ground. Alright, so let's see, what did I do?
Need to go 180 out.
No, it might be 180 out, but I gave it a little bit of timing. So put a little bit more fuel in it. See what happens. Dad, go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. Alright, well, tried to start it a couple times. Keeps blowing vacuum caps off. And it is backfiring out the exhaust, but only after it blows the vacuum caps off. So I'm just starting to think it's 180 out, so I'm gonna pop it off and turn it 180, and we'll put it back in. Not quite sure if I got that a true 180. We'll crank it over and see what happens, and if it's not a true 180, then we'll just have to reset everything. But that's okay. Not sure if I mentioned this to you guys already, but I'm going to start it up, and I'm not going to let it sit here and run for a long time or anything like that, because I don't have fans yet. I'm putting electric fans on it. I don't have fans hooked up yet and stuff like that. The main point of this whole deal is I want to make sure the motor's going to run, and I want to make sure that it gets oil pressure. So these vacuum caps that I got are kind of loose, which they should be pulling vacuum or sucking the caps on, not blowing them off, but for the moment I'm going to go ahead and tape them down, just make sure they don't come off. And turn that just a little bit, just because. You ready, Dad? Give it a little bit of gas and go ahead. Now we're not getting anything. So not as far as it'll go that way. Try it again. Try it. All right, guys. guys, we're gonna let the starter cool off for a minute, make sure we don't burn it up. And I'm gonna see if I can find something else that might be wrong with it, and I'll let you know. Alright, well, I did some digging around to see if I could find any reason why we weren't getting anything, and some idiot flipped the distributor 180 and never plugged the ignition module back in on the distributor after he put the cap back on. So I figured that out. I got it on there now. Put a little bit of gas in here, roll it over again, and just see if we get anything. So go ahead. Try it again. I don't know if you guys heard that, but I did. It sounds like we're a lot closer now. Let's see if I can get a little bit more out of it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to keep gas going in it because she's going to need everything we want to give her. So, let's go again, Pops.
It ran.
Yeah. All right. It ran. Thank you all so much for watching. No. I'm just kidding. All right, but we know it did just fire off and whatnot, and that's better than it's ever done before. And since I know we're close, and I know it's going to fire, and I have all the stuff right here to do it, we're just going to go ahead and hook a fuel system up to it real quick. And like I said, I cannot let it sit here and idle because I don't have fans or anything. But I want to let it run long enough to make sure we got oil pressure and just know that it's running, and then we'll say, okay, this motor's probably good. And then we'll go from there. So let me get our little fuel system stuff gathered up real quick, and I'll bring you back. All right, I got my temporary fuel source run here. And just so you guys think it was nice and easy and everything went fine, yeah, it fought us too. But got our hose there, fuel filter so we can see our fuel pump, hooks up to the battery, and then we got our gas can over here. I already ran it to make sure we had fuel come through and nothing was leaking anywhere. And for the most part, nothing was leaking anywhere. We did have a small leak up at the carburetor, but I think I took care of it. So, and it may need a regulator. I don't know. But anyways, I'm gonna go turn the other camera on. The bowls on the carburetor should be full now, so we're gonna see if it'll fire up again. All right, here goes nothing. Go for it, Dad. I think that's probably backfiring because it's running out of fuel in the carb, but might be timing.
Oh, did you run out of gas in it?
I think it started to. I think that's why it was popping back.
You need an alligator clip to hold that on.
See any gas going out down there?
No. Just transmission fluid.
Go ahead.
Ready?
Yep. Hit it again. Hit it again. All right. We're gonna have to mess with some timing and stuff, and it's definitely cold. Dad,
Yep.
let's try to hit it again with the choke on, see what happens. Go ahead. Puffing smoke out over here somewhere, and I don't know where.
Well, you got oil pressure that time.
Good. If you guys didn't hear what Pops just said, we finally got oil pressure. I knew it was going to take a little bit to get it up there. Try it again, Dad. All right, well, we've heard it run. It's got oil pressure.
45 pounds.
45 pounds, and it wasn't even running. Yep. So we've got oil pressure. That should, Pop said it's got up to 45 pounds right about the time it died. So I'm sure we got better than that, but I'll be back in just a second. All right, first startup officially complete. And I know you guys are probably thinking, well, man, that was lame. Like, all this ambition and all this building up and all this doing all this stuff just for it to run for 30 seconds. Yep, that's about it. There's a couple things I needed to be assured of. I needed to be assured that it was gonna hold oil. I needed to be assured that it was gonna have oil pressure. I needed to be assured that it was gonna hold coolant. And honestly, I needed to be assured that it was going to run. Like, I've never heard this motor run before, and I put a lot of work into it to get it to where it's at. So now we know it runs. And honestly, I got a lot more work done. The engine wiring is clean and sorted out. It just needs to be loomed and tied up. All the other wiring under the hood that's obsolete and unnecessary is gone. And I just got to clean up the lights, wiring for the lights. I got to clean up the wiring for the engine that I ran, and a little bit of stuff. But for the most part, everything in the engine compartment is pretty well done. We still got to do electric fans, wire those in. We still have to set the timing and actually let the thing run and break the cam in. But I got to have my electric fans on and working before I can do that. Another reason I didn't let it run for a whole heck of a long time is, if you look down there, you see that really big puddle pouring out of the back of the transmission? Yeah, because we don't have a drive shaft in it, so it's all over the ground. We don't need no more of that. And I've been fighting this thing, literally fighting this thing for 2 weeks, and it's been a pain in the butt. But another thing, I don't want to cry to you guys on here, and I'm not looking for sympathy or anything like that, but just in case there was any questions about there not being a video last week or anything, I've got a really bad hip, and it causes problems with my lower back. Last year at the truck gathering, I got in an accident in Rum Runner, and it popped my hip out of place, and no matter what we've done, I can't keep it in. So some days are better than others. Some days I'm up and ready to go, and some days I can't hardly walk. So I fight through it. I work every day, but some days are slower than others. And the last week and a half has been the slower than others days because I've been in a lot of pain. So, like I said, I'm not crying. I'm not looking for sympathy. I just tell you guys everything, so I wanted to fill you in. We got a long way to go and a short time to get there. Pops is here helping out, which makes a big difference. And we're gonna hammer down on Evergreen and make sure we get her to the show. So, glad you guys came along for the ride. We got this thing running. If you want some Harmon Garage merch and you want to help out with us continuing on the builds and stuff, www.harmongarage.net. Links in the description. Other than that, Pop says bye. Thank you guys so much for watching. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to do this. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you next time.